There is a distinct, almost musical cadence to a district attorney delivering good news. It's a brisk, strictly business tone, laced with an unmistakable undercurrent of satisfaction. 2 days ago, my phone buzzed with a call from a Chavance, the prosecutor handling a case that began in the bitter, slush-filled depths of January. When the legal system grinds its gears, it usually moves with agonizing lethargy, spitting out compromises and plea deals that leave victims feeling hollow. But every so often, an entitled aggressor makes a series of unforced errors so spectacularly catastrophic that karma doesn't just knock on their door, it kicks the hinges off. What started as a dispute over a blocked wheelchair ramp escalated into an absolute masterclass in self-destruction. I didn't have to ruin my neighbor's life. I just handed her the shovel and she dug until she hit the earth's mantle. Living with severe postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, means existing in a perpetual negotiation with gravity. When I stand, my blood vessels fail to constrict properly. Blood pools in my lower extremities, my heart rate skyrockets to compensate, and if I push it too far, my brain pulls the plug and I drop like a stone. It's a volatile fainting disorder that relegated me to a wheelchair for anything more strenuous than shuffling around my kitchen. On a Tuesday evening in late January, the wind was howling off the concrete, biting through my winter coat as I pulled my modified van into the parking lot of my apartment complex. I was exhausted. My spine ached, my pulse was already a dull, rapid thud in my temples, and all I wanted was the horizontal sanctuary of my mattress. Instead, I was greeted by the sight of a battered, maroon Nissan sedan parked entirely illegally. It wasn't just hovering in the red-painted, no-parking fire lane zone. Two of its tires were brazenly mounted on the sidewalk, completely suffocating the curb cutout I needed to navigate my chair into the building. This wasn't a one-off oversight. This was Bettina. Bettina was a relatively new addition to the first floor, a woman who seemed to vibrate with a constant, frenetic hostility. For months, she had treated the fire lane as her personal VIP loading zone. I had mentioned it in passing to our landlord, Mr. Halloway, a tired man who managed the property with a profound sense of resignation. He had instructed me to document the infractions. Take photos, Thuron, he'd told me. Email them to me every time. I need a paper trail to evict. Because the ramp was entirely blocked, I had no choice but to leave my wheelchair in the back of the van. I would have to rely on my cane and sheer willpower to make the agonizingly slow, upright trek to my door. Every step was a risk. I could feel the familiar, sickening drain of blood from my head, the creeping static in my peripheral vision. I leaned heavily against the cold metal of my van, pulled off my gloves with stiff fingers and retrieved my phone. I framed the shot, the license plate, the red fire lane paint, the obstructed ramp, and tapped the shutter button. The flash was an accident. The automatic setting triggered in the dim parking lot lights, a brief, harsh burst of illumination that reflected off the Nissan's muddy trunk. Instantly, the heavy metal door of apartment 104 violently swung open. Bettina stormed out into the freezing air, clad in nothing but a thin tracksuit and a pair of fur-lined slides. The smell of cheap menthol cigarettes and aerosol hairspray hit me a second before she did. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, her voice a grating, serrated edge that echoed off the brick walls. "Taking a picture for Halloway," I said, keeping my voice painfully even, focusing on my breathing to keep the dizziness at bay. "You're blocking the ramp again. I can't get my chair out." "Delete it," she demanded, closing the distance between us with alarming speed. She didn't stop at a conversational distance. She breached my personal space, her chest almost touching mine, flecks of spit flying from her lips as she screamed obscenities. I took a precarious step back, my cane slipping slightly on a patch of black ice. My heart was already hammering an irregular rhythm against my ribs, struggling to pump oxygen to my brain. She lunged, grabbing for my phone. Instinct, raw and unthinking, took over. I raised my free hand and shoved her back by the shoulder to create distance. It was as if I had flipped a switch on a bomb. Bettina's eyes widened, a flash of pure, unhinged malice crossing her face. Before I could brace myself, she lunged forward again, her hands darting out. Fingers clamped around my throat. I felt a sharp, searing pain as her thick, jagged acrylic nails dug instantly into the soft flesh of my neck, breaking the skin. She squeezed, cutting off my air supply, and with her other hand she began wildly swinging at my head. A closed fist connected with my jaw. My vision swam. The lack of oxygen, combined with the extreme upright exertion, pushed my fragile autonomic nervous system past its breaking point. The edges of the world began to blacken. "Hey, get the hell off him!" The shout belonged to Gideon, my roommate, who had been smoking on the second-floor balcony with our neighbor, Matteo. Heavy footsteps thundered down the exterior metal staircase. Within seconds, Gideon and Matteo were pulling a thrashing, screaming Bettina off of me. With the pressure released from my throat, I collapsed against the side of the van. I tasted copper. I touched my neck, my fingers coming away smeared with thick, warm blood. Sirens wailed in the distance. Matteo had already dialed emergency services. The police arrived simultaneously with the paramedics. I vaguely remember the flashing red and blue lights painting the snowbanks, the sharp smell of antiseptic as a medic pressed a gauze pad to my neck. And then, the inevitable happened. The adrenaline crashed, my blood pressure plummeted, and the parking lot completely faded to black. I woke up hours later under the harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency room, an IV dripping saline into my arm to stabilize my volume. A police officer, a stocky man whose badge read Caldwell, was sitting in a plastic chair near the foot of my bed, flipping through a small notepad. "You took a nasty spill," Officer Caldwell said, looking up as I stirred. "Syncope episode, the docs called it. Your neck looks like you went 10 rounds with a feral cat. We need to know if you want to press charges." "Absolutely," I rasped, my throat aching with every syllable. "Aggravated assault," Caldwell nodded, pen poised. "We didn't arrest her on the scene. It was chaotic, you were unconscious, and she retreated into her apartment and locked the door. We figured we'd get your statement, file the warrant, and pick her up tomorrow. Probably just catch her in the parking lot." My mind raced, cutting through the brain fog. If they arrested her on the street, she'd get booked, post a small bond, and play the sympathetic single mother card to the judge. She'd get probation, a slap on the wrist. She would come back to the building, angrier and more dangerous than before. I needed to ensure she was neutralized as a threat. "Officer Caldwell," I said slowly, making sure my enunciation was clear despite the pain, "don't arrest her in the parking lot. You need to serve that warrant inside her apartment." "Make sure they go in," Caldwell frowned, his brow furrowing. "Why, it's cleaner to grab them in transit." "Because," I replied, "last month when Holloway was doing heater inspections, her door was wide open. I saw a matte black Glock mounted on a magnetic strip right by her kitchen entryway. Bettina made a big deal a few weeks ago about how she can't vote because of a felony drug conviction. A convicted felon with a firearm in plain view." Caldwell's pen stopped. He looked at me, a slow realization dawning in his eyes. The dynamic of the arrest had just shifted from a routine domestic dispute pickup to a felony weapons sweep. "I'll relay that to the tactical team," he murmured. That single tactical suggestion was the thread that unraveled Bettina's entire existence. When a Chavance, the district attorney, called me 2 days ago, she didn't just give me an update. She gave me a full accounting of the absolute wreckage Bettina had brought upon herself. "I thought you'd appreciate knowing the scope of what your tip uncovered, Thuron," Miss Vance said, the shuffling of heavy file folders audible over the line. "When the police executed the warrant at apartment 104, they didn't knock politely. They breached. What they found inside was a veritable treasure trove of criminality. First, they secured the firearm I had mentioned. A quick serial number run confirmed the Glock wasn't just illegally possessed by a felon, it was reported stolen out of a neighboring county 3 years prior. But that was just the appetizer. The apartment was a biohazard. The DA described surfaces littered with used hypodermic needles, burned spoons, and small plastic baggies dusted with residue. Living amidst this squalor was Bettina's 8-year-old son, Elian. The officers immediately called Child Protective Services. It didn't stop there. An officer, running the plates on the maroon Nissan parked outside to tie it to her, discovered that the car didn't belong to her either. It had been reported stolen from a long-term airport parking lot 2 months ago. She was driving a stolen vehicle without insurance on a suspended license, parking it in a fire lane. She was held without bond, Miss Vance continued, her tone crisp. But the piece de resistance, Thuron, was the video evidence. "Video evidence?" I asked, bewildered. "The parking lot cameras are dummies. Holloway never wired them." "Not security cameras," the DA replied. "Her son's iPad. When Bettina went outside to confront you, she apparently handed the tablet to the 8-year-old and told him to film her putting the cripple in his place. She wanted a video for social media. Instead, the boy captured high-definition, perfectly framed footage of her instigating the fight, launching an unprovoked physical assault, and attempting to strangle a disabled man. It completely negates any self-defense claim she tried to float during interrogation." The sheer, breathtaking stupidity of it left me speechless. She had documented her own felony assault and handed the prosecution a wrapped gift. Between the overwhelming video proof of the assault, the possession of a stolen firearm by a felon, the stolen vehicle, and maintaining a drug premises with a minor present. "We aren't offering a plea deal," Miss Vance concluded. "Furthermore, we pulled her jacket. She has 7 prior counts of assault in the past 5 years across 2 different states. She's a habitual offender. With the federal multipliers for the stolen gun, she's looking at a minimum of 30 years. Her parental rights are being emergency terminated, and the child is currently safe in a foster placement. If I had just let the police arrest her in the parking lot, they would never have entered the apartment. They wouldn't have found the stolen gun, the stolen car keys, the drugs, or the iPad. She would have caught a misdemeanor assault charge, cried in front of a judge about being a stressed mother, and walked out with mandated anger management. Instead, she lost her child, her home, her stolen car, and the next 3 decades of her freedom. There is a profound lesson in the architecture of this revenge. True justice rarely requires you to stoop to the level of your abuser. You don't need to scream, you don't need to fight dirty, and you certainly don't need to break the law. You just need to pay attention. The most dangerous people are often the most careless, leaving a trail of gasoline behind them wherever they go. All you have to do is calmly, quietly strike a match and hand it to the authorities. Never underestimate the power of staying calm under pressure, knowing your rights, and observing the details others ignore. If you enjoyed this story of absolute catastrophic karma, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and leave a comment down below. What would you have done if someone blocked your only way home? Stay safe, stay observant, and I'll see you in the next one.